friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Elenbaas, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Yesterday I was in my garden and I harvested a humongous batch of Blue Vervain. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you how I made a medicine from it, specifically a tincture. And I'm going to walk you through step by step and show you how I made Blue Vervain tincture. My daughter pops in at some point. You'll see her. She was helping me muddle and rip the leaves up. So she'll be featured in today's episode. I also wanted to mention a few things before we get started. The first is that there are so many different ways to make an herbal tincture. And these are just some tips from my own personal experience. And I highly suggest when you're making herbal medicines, try a number of different approaches. For example, I'm going to show you how to hand tear the leaves and flowers, and there are so many other ways. Experiment, have fun, try 3 or 4 different methods of medicine making, and then see what final product feels best to you, which one tastes the best. I'll go through some different types of alcohol you can use in the tincture making process. In the end, it really matters most what you like. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please, before you continue on, take a moment to click subscribe. That helps other people to find me. Learn about my year 2 herbal apprenticeship course, which starts this fall. This is for anyone who has a base knowledge in herbal medicine, but wants to go deeper. Click below on the link to the Sky House website where you can learn more. Let's take a look at how to make your own Blue Vervain tincture. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is that right now is the ideal time for harvesting so many herbs, Blue Vervain being one of them. But you might be outside in your garden or on your land or in a park nearby, and you might notice, gosh, there's a lot of goldenrod, there's a lot of whatever herb. And tincturing is a great way to make a medicine that you can keep all year long. It's very easy to store, very easy to dose. As you're listening to today's talk on making a tincture with Blue Vervain, keep in the back of your mind that you can apply this technique to many other herbs as well. All right, without further ado, let's go into my kitchen and take a look at making tincture out of Blue Vervain. Hi, welcome to my kitchen. I will show you how I'm going to make Blue Vervain tincture using some fresh Blue Vervain from my garden. It's a lot. Look at all of this. Whoa, this is no joke. This is a very big harvest. So I'm going to show you step by step what to do when you harvest your own Blue Vervain, and then some tips I have for making it extra tasty as well as making it super potent. First, let's talk a little bit about why Blue Vervain. Why might you want to make this into a tincture to use for yourself or for family and friends? The first reason is that this herb is probably my favorite anti-spasmodic. It is so good for tension, for cramps, especially for tension that is held in the neck, tension in the jaw, tension in the shoulders, a lot of upper body tension. It is so good at relaxing that gripping pain. Another reason why you might benefit from Blue Vervain is that it is bitter, it is cooling, and it is really good for the liver, and it's a helpful ally for digestion. Blue Vervain is also a wonderful hormone modulator, and while it's not good for every type of hormonal needs, it is excellent when it comes to transitions into puberty and then transitions into perimenopause. Blue Vervain is an excellent ally when you want to grip down and hold on. This herb can really help take down stress, tension, and the need to control and manage everything. One of my teachers, Matthew Wood, says that this herb is a really good one for people who are uptight, who like to make lists and control other people. If you're one of those people that really like to make lists of lists or be critical of other people, then this herb is a wonderful mental ally. Let's talk about some of the steps that are absolutely essential for making a tincture, and specifically making a tincture with Blue Vervain. The first step is that you need to have 100% correct plant identification. Now, this one is so important. It can be very dangerous because let's say you pick an herb that is poisonous, and a lot of herbs look alike. You do want to make sure that you're 100% certain you've got the right plant. The Blue Vervain that I have right now is starting to wilt, so we might not be able to get you the best details of this plant, but I think we can get pretty close. One thing you can notice about this plant is that it has a central stem, and then we'll have stems that come out from the side. And at the top of each of these stems, you'll see a lot of smaller seed pods and then flowers. And with this one, when you first pick them and they're fresh, the flowers this is all standing up straight, but you can see it is starting to wilt. And so if I hold it upside down, this is kind of more what it's gonna look like when you select it. So you wanna look for these purple flowers. The purple flowers are flowering at the head of each flower bracket. The leaves are also very long and serrated at the edges. There's a very sharp, doubly serrated edge. And a few lookalikes just to kind of think about is purple loosestrife. It has a much brighter purple. Blue Vervain is more of I'm gonna call it kind of a bluish purple, more of an indigo kind of purple flower. Purple loosestrife is kind of a pinkish purple, and it grows in similar places alongside the roads, bodies of water, streams and lakes, and it has larger flowers than Blue Vervain, but it does have very similar looking leaves and a very similar tall structure. Step 2 is you want to cut the plant at the right spot. Now, my Blue Vervain from my garden is very, very tall, and I went down and probably about a foot from the ground, I made a cut at an angle, and I cut it right above the stem. Here's another place I could cut it. Here, because what I want to leave behind are these leaves and the stem right here, so that these leaves can keep growing and maybe even branch off and create another flower head. This is good for the plant, and as herbalists, we always want to think about the plant and what's in the plant's best interest, what is gonna be the least invasive, the least harmful way of harvesting. So finding that right location of harvesting right above the leaves, right above. That is where you're going to create the least amount of impact and harm and allow the plant to repair and grow itself. And then one thing that I like to do that's just sort of an extra little touch is after I clip it, I put my finger on the end and I apply a little bit of pressure. I don't remember who taught me that or if it was just something I started doing on my own, but I know for myself when there's like a cut or an injury, applying a little bit of pressure just feels good and it's soothing. So if you want to take that little extra step and thank the plant, you can apply a little bit of pressure, and that's just a nice way to just acknowledge and to maybe even give the plant a little bit of a healing touch and a little bit of pressure in case it does experience pain. Another thing that I think is really important is that you ask the plant's permission to cut them. This is a little bit of a nuanced art, and it takes a lot of practice to be able to tell when a plant says yes and when a plant says no. Everyone can start asking that right away. You don't need to have a certification in order to ask a plant if it's okay to harvest. What I like to do is just spend time with the plants, and I typically, unless I'm growing it in my garden specifically for medicine making, if I'm out in the wild, I won't take any more than 10% of the wild material. That's because I want the plant to be able to grow back year after year. I want to leave the flowers there for the pollinators, and I think it's just a respectful way of engaging in an ecosystem. However, in my own garden, when I'm growing them and I know I'm going to need quite a bit for the medicine that I'm making, I will still leave about 1/3 of the plant, and I'll take about 2/3 for harvesting, and I'll really wait until like the last possible moment before they go out of their prime spot. And that again leaves the plants available for the bees and for the butterflies and for the insects, and also just gives the plant to have a really full lifespan before I cut it to medicine make. Next up, you have to choose your alcohol. What kind of alcohol do you want to use to extract the medicine from the plants that you've harvested. Now with Blue Vervain, I've tried a lot of different types of extractions, and my favorite is brandy. I really like using brandy as my alcohol because it has a little bit of a sweet flavor. It's a little bit earthy and woody, and it balances out the very, very bitter taste of Blue Vervain. You could use vodka. I like vodka because it's a very clean, it's a very clear flavor. If you want to preserve the brightness in a plant, vodka is a really nice choice, organic when possible. And then for herbs that are very spicy, I really like to use tequila because the spiciness and earthiness. Personally, because I like the bitter taste of Blue Vervain as a medicine, I want to capture and hold it, but I also want to create a little bit of a smoothness with it. I'm gonna go with my favorite sweeter alcohol, which is my brandy. The way that I think about alcohols is, do I want to balance a flavor? Do I want to bring a flavor out? Or do I want to try to have no flavor? If I want to bring out the sweetness in a blend and the earthiness, I go with brandy. If I want something that's very bright and is going to bring out the brightness in a plant, like rue, lavender is a really nice one with vodka. And then spicier herbs like maybe your bee balm, oregano, rosemary, those can work really nicely with tequila. All of these liquors are 40% alcohol, and that is a perfect amount when making a fresh plant tincture. You really need to have a minimum of 20% alcohol for the tincture to not spoil. When you're using a fresh plant, depending on which fresh plant it is and how much water it contains, you're pretty safe if you use any of these alcohols, as long as you allow the plant to wilt for maybe 1 to 2 hours, and that will start to allow some of the extra water to start to dry and evaporate out of the plant material. Your next step is figuring out how are you going to break down the herbs that you've gathered. There's a few different methods. I'll tell you why each one is good and why each one has its own caveats. The first way is the hand ripping method. This is probably the most ancient and oldest way of preparing your herbs for tincturing, and it's simply what it sounds like. You're gonna rip up the plant material into as small of parts as possible, and that's gonna allow the alcohol to get in there and to extract out the medicinal compounds. The second method is by cutting. You can use a knife or clippers or scissors and cut the plant material into its smallest parts. And then the third way is blending, where you basically do a rough chop of the herbs, you add it to a blender with the alcohol, and you blend that together. Now here are the pros and cons of each method. In the tearing method, which I'm gonna do today, what I like about it is that it's meditative and it's probably the most traditional way. I recently learned that my great-grandmother, when she would make salads and make her own salad dressings, and she was from southern Italy or Sicily, she would always hand rip, and she believed that it preserved the flavor of the herbs and of the lettuces better. I personally like that too, because you open up the cell walls when you rip. Sometimes when you cut or you blend, the cell walls can become damaged or kind of pressed together, and you might not get the best extraction. The downside of hand ripping is that it takes a very long time. It is probably your slowest process of them all. And you can tell me in the comments section what you think. Have you tried them? Have you noticed one works better than the other? I have a little experiment of my own going right now with bee balm, and I did hand ripping and I did blending, and I'm gonna see which one turns out better. So I'll keep you posted when I press them and let you know if I can really tell the difference in the two. All right. Let's start the hand ripping method. I have my Blue Vervain here. First, what I'm going to do is strip the leaves off of the stem, and I'm simply gonna pull like this, and I'm sliding my hand down and I'm pulling all of the leaves off, and then I'm going to hand rip. Now these herbs have been sitting probably for about 3 hours now, and you can see they're wilted, and I like to make my fresh plant tinctures after they're a little wilted, again, because it gets some of that initial water out and it makes it easier to rip. This process will take me quite a bit of time, and I'm using my nails. If you have short nails like this is kind of the ideal length. You're gonna rip and you're gonna tear, and you might have to go through them a few times to really make sure you're breaking up the plant material. Notice that I'm also squeezing while I'm ripping. I'm bruising the plant material. That also starts to release some of the volatile oils and some of the compounds in the plant and allows me to damage the leaves a little bit, which allows the alcohol to come in and extract those compounds out. With Blue Vervain, you'll notice that there are flowers on the top, and we have some seeds and we have flower heads. I'm going to use all of this in the tincture. Everything that is at the, pretty much the whole thing I'm going to use except for the stems. I could use the stems, but I find they take up a lot of space, and I don't think that they have the best of the plant in it. So I'm going to place these off to the sides. With the flower heads, I'm going to rip them off. So just using a little bit of strength here. I'm going to pull them off of the base of the stem and then use my nails and just break it up. It's not, there's really not, it's more of an art than a science. And I'm just ripping and pulling and ripping and pulling. And my nails are going to get dirty. Usually after I do this method, my nails they start off this really pretty green color and then they start to turn black over time. Notice how I'm picking up the plant material and I'm breaking it down into smaller and smaller bits. So this is about what I have thus far, and we've been here for about a minute or so. So if I'm trying to make a huge jar of tincture, we're going to talk about the jar size, I have a way to go. If you want to learn more about Blue Vervain and its medicinal qualities, I actually have 2 videos on my YouTube channel. One is under my Herb of the Month playlist, and I just published that one recently. You can learn all about the medicinal values, the historical uses, some of the chemical compounds found in Blue Vervain that's native here to North America. And I also talk a little bit about Verbena officinalis, which is the vervain used throughout Europe as a medicine. I have another personal medicine journey story on my YouTube channel, and I'll include links to both of those videos in the description below. Another thing I like about the hand ripping method is you really get to smell and feel the texture of the plant. And I really do think it connects you with the plant in a deeper way. It's not just using, a mechanical thing to break up. And a blender I do it because it's so easy. But when I put those plants in a blender, I have to tell you, I don't love the way it makes me feel. I feel really bad for the plant. And then all of a sudden it's just done. And I'm like, well, that was really fast, and I didn't really get to enjoy the process of working with the plant and seeing the plant and smelling the plant. While I'm here ripping plant material with you, I wanted to share with you something that I learned about Blue Vervain when I was studying this plant in greater depth for a class I taught on Blue Vervain at the Midwest Women's Herb Conference last year. And that was that the seeds were actually dried and used as a food by the native people that live, the indigenous Native Americans from this land, the Ojibwa and the Sioux, would dry these seed pods and grind them up. So I tried it, and I ground the seeds, I made them into a powder, I soaked them overnight and strained them a few times. And then I blended that up with a little bit of, what did I use? I think I used a little bit of water, and that didn't really work. So then I added a little bit of my own flour to it, some gluten-free flour, just to see, and that kind of bound it up, and I made some pancakes out of it. And I brought those to the Midwest Women's Herb Conference, and I had everyone try them. And they were better. The looks on people's faces, I think partly because they were not expecting it to taste so bad. And I obviously, I think probably when they were being prepared, there was probably seasoning and probably some honey or something sweet added because of the bitterness. Maybe they were soaked a few more times. So I thought that was kind of funny. I'll never forget the faces on everyone, or the looks on everyone's faces when they tried those really, really bitter bitter pancakes. However, I will say that it's a good thing to know, because if we ever do run into situations where we need to live off the land, knowing that you can harvest blue vervain seeds and they are very protein and fiber rich survival food is something that we should all carry in our back pocket. Another cool story I can share with you while I am continuing to tear my batch of blue vervain is that my dog Hilda, who is a rescue dog and came to us with very, very severe anxiety. She was on high amounts of trazodone, which is basically like a tranquilizer. She comes out to the garden with me and loves to eat these blue vervain leaves. And she'll just go right up to the plant and just start gnawing at the leaves. And I have a video if you want to see her eating straight from the plant on my YouTube channel. Actually, I think it's on my Instagram channel. So if you go to Sky House Herbs on Instagram, you can see my 100-pound English Mastiff eating these super, super bitter leaves. I mean, if you had them fresh right off the plant, it's not like they're sweet and there's something that, an animal would naturally seek out. They're very bitter. But my dog is very smart. I think, she's a survivor, and I think she has also been out in the garden with me so often and so much. She sees me nibble on things, and then she nibbles on things. One of her favorite things to nibble on besides blue vervain leaves are chamomile flowers. She'll actually put her head into the patch of chamomile and just mow down the flowers. It's pretty, pretty sweet. Listen to this sound. Do you hear that kind of popping? It's very satisfying, isn't it? When you only get this when you hand rip. Another thing people ask me about is bugs. Like, what do I do about the bugs? Well, when you first harvest, it's best to shake out your herbs outside and give them a really good shake. You're gonna lose some flowers, you might lose some leaves, it's okay. But shake it out really, really well outside and then bring them inside. And that's why I also like to let them sit for a little while, because the bugs will crawl away. I think they kind of know. They're like, this looks dangerous, I'm out of here. And so they'll escape off to the corners, hopefully back outside. And then the other thing is that when you're actually tearing and preparing the plant material, they're gonna continue to run away. So often I'll put a piece of paper down underneath, and then if they start to crawl off into them, I'll pick up that paper, try to scoop them up and bring them back outside. Of course, some bugs are gonna get into your medicine, and honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, what are you gonna do? Obviously, personally, I would like to save all the bugs, and I don't really want bugs in them. But for, I think probably about every tincture I've made, there's probably at least a few bugs in it. And I just say, thank you for your service. The next step is a little tricky, and that's choosing which jar size is going to be the best one for making your tincture. I don't think that there is an actual science behind it. I think it's more of a trial and error thing. And I always tell this to my students, start with a smaller jar than what you think you need, and you can always go bigger. But often what happens is that we have all of this plant material and we think it needs more space than what it does, because this plant material needs to get packed down into the jar and it will lose a lot of that air space. So even though it looks fluffy here, it will pack down really far into a jar. Now, one thing that is important is that your jar needs to be glass. You cannot use plastic for this. I don't recommend using metal. Glass jars are ideal. You can use a pint-sized canning jar. These work really nicely for smaller batches. This is a quart size, and this is the medium, and this is a half-gallon size, and this is really good for making larger batches. Today I'm gonna go with this half-gallon size jar. This jar actually came to me from my husband's father, and it was gifted to him by his grandmother. So this actual jar was my husband's great-grandmother's, and I'm really excited to use it to make this blue vervain medicine. So let's just take a look and see how all of this plant material goes into here and what it actually looks like. What I'm gonna recommend that you do is that you weigh out the amount of herb you're putting in. You can do basically the folk method of making a tincture or weight to volume. Today I'm doing weight to volume. And so you are gonna need to weigh out how much herb you have and how much alcohol you're using in order to get a volume that then you can replicate later if you really like or didn't like the way it turned out. You'll need a kitchen scale for this. I just have, I don't know, I bought it on Amazon, just any old standard kitchen scale that goes to the second decimal place. Right now I have my ball jar on my scale. I'm gonna tear it out so that it takes away the weight of the actual jar so I can know how much the herb itself weighs. All right, let's start putting it in there, and it always surprises me how much herb it takes to really fill one of these jars. And you can see I'm spilling stuff. It's fine. I'm gonna pick it up later. It's on a cutting board, so I'll just keep scooping and pressing it down. If you can find something that can fit into your jar that you can help press the herbs down to fit more in, that's a really good idea. This doesn't fit. Let me look for something else. I'm gonna use this spoon to just start pressing my plant material down, and just look already how much air I'm able to press out so that I can fit more plant material in. All of that looked like it could fill the whole jar, but probably I can press it down to maybe even fill just a quarter of it. And then I'm gonna rip up more plants and add it in. This weighs out now to 140 grams. I'm gonna jot that down, and then as I keep adding my herbs, I'm going to add up those numbers. In this ripping method, it takes a lot of time, so my daughter Virginia is helping me. She's picking off some of the Blue Vervain leaves, and then we're gonna continue to rip them up together and fill up this jar. Is it fun?
Yeah, right?
Right.
And then, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then the day it happened, you're like, oh, I remember when I said it's not today, but it is gonna happen, and it's happening.
And then it's happening.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's really weird to think about it.
It is. Time is so weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time just
Definitely.
really is strange.
It goes quickly.
But then it goes slow sometimes.
Yeah. Like on, for example, when you take a walk, you're always like, but it's taking so long when you're taking a walk to the place you want to get to. And then on the way back, you're like, but this isn't so long.
Yeah. Like that wasn't very long at all. Or like when you're waiting for something really exciting to happen.
Or like, think of it, you know how we're doing this right now?
Yes.
Eventually, we're going to be at Target.
Yeah. Eventually we'll be somewhere else.
We won't be here, and then when we are at Target or at home doing something, we're like, see?
So where are we right now? What are we actually here right now?
Yeah, we are.
That's real?
Yeah, it's real.
Is the future? Thinking of the future real?
I don't know.
That's the thing.
What did you print?
We finally did it. We filled our entire jar. And just to give you an idea, this jar packed full came to 429 grams. And pretty much all of the Blue Vervain I showed you, minus this one stalk. That's a lot of herb to get to fill a half-gallon jar. The next thing is figure out how much alcohol you need. I would recommend a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 4. What this means is that the 1 stands for the number of grams, and the 3 stands for the amount of milliliters. And most tinctures are a 1 to 2 is sort of standard, and 1 to 2 is easier to get to if you shred or you put your herbs into a blender, because the more space you compact down, the more liquid you can fit in. So a 1 to 2 is stronger than a 1 to 3. Today, I'm gonna start with seeing if I can make a 1 to 3, see if I can fit that in, and if not, then we'll go to a 1 to 4. Today I'll be using brandy. Because this is a 40% alcohol blend, I don't need to dilute it or I don't need to strengthen it. Ugh, but I do have to get the lid off. Jeez, Whew, okay, I got it. So if I want to make it a 1 to 3, if I have 429 grams of herbs and I multiply that times 3, that equals 1,287. So I've got a nice Pyrex glass measuring cup here, and I'm going to start off by filling it up to 1,000 milliliters. And then from there, I'm going to add 287 and see if I can get to fill it to the top. All right, there we go. So I'll take this 1,000 milliliter and I'm going to fill my jar. Here we go. So, here's the thing is sometimes we have a little spillage, we lose a little bit. Sometimes we lose a lot. And, honestly, ratios are there to just sort of help give us an idea. And if you spill a little bit, you know what? No harm done. I think it's okay. You maybe lost, I don't know, maybe 10 mils. All right, how are we doing? Okay. Ooh, can you see the bubbles? I'm bringing you in a little closer so you can see. I'm gonna push this plant material down. And so at 1,000 milliliters, I'm pushing some of the air bubbles out, but there's still space in the jar. And you really want to fill your jar all the way to the top to cover all of the plant material. And even though I pushed this plant material down when it was dry and I thought it was fully packed, it wasn't, because look, there's still, look at all that space now at the top. Now I'm going to measure out 287 more milliliters and see if I can get it to cover up to the top. So there's 200, and there's about, I'm gonna go a little more since I spilled a little bit. And now let's see if that will cap us off. Here we go. Ooh, it's close. I'm gonna push out. I'm gonna see if I can get a little more air bubbles out to make more room. Because I really wanna get a nice clean 1 to 3 ratio and not have to subtract out the alcohol that I'm not using. Okay, so I'm really jamming it down in there. Let's see if I can just fit this in. I think I will. Woohoo, I did it. All right, so this is a 1 to 3 Blue Vervain tincture in brandy. I'm now gonna use my lid and I'm going to seal it. And the next step that is so important is labeling. So I'm gonna make my label and then I'll show you what that looks like. This is what I have on the label. I have Blue Vervain, which is the name. I have the Latin name, Verbena hastata. I have the number of grams of herbs, so it's 429 grams and 1,287 milliliters of brandy. And then I put that ratio as a 1 to 3. I wrote down that it was fresh herb from the Sky House garden. You always want to write where you sourced your herb from. The method is hand torn and it's flowers and leaves. No stems I wrote on there just for my own notes so I kind of remember what I did. And then today's date, which is 8/12/2025. I'll apply this to the jar. And I'll let this sit in a non-sunny place for about 30 days, about a month. And after a month, I will strain this out and then I can bottle it and do what I want with it. Make it as a tincture for my family. I might even start selling this, so keep an eye out. One thing I wanted to tell you that's a tip. A tip for making really nice medicine, especially if you're into flower essences and energetics, is adding in a flower essence. I'm gonna pan this down so you can see what I made earlier today. When I harvested the Blue Vervain, I very carefully removed the flowers and then added them to some spring water and let this sit out in the sun. I put some crystals around the bowl just to kind of form some protection. And what I'll do is I'll make this flower essence, I'll strain it probably now, and then add a little bit of brandy, about 20% of brandy to it, just to keep it from spoiling. And then I'm gonna add this flower essence into the tincture once it's all ready and blend them together. And that way I'm getting not only the medicinal actions of the tincture, but I'm also getting the energetic imprint of the flower. The last thing I'll say is that making your plant medicines is a very personal process, and it should be something that you enjoy. It should be fun. So if you are finding it to be stressful, if you're really worried about it turning out right, put on some music, invite a friend over. Let it be something that is very enjoyable, because I really do think that the quality of how you make the medicine goes into the medicine. And today I was so happy to have my daughter with me for part of it. So, I think her good energy and good vibes are a part of this particular batch of medicine. And I think all of those little pieces can make a medicine even more powerful. Thank you for watching today's episode. If you want to learn more about Blue Vervain, please look at the links below. And if you have any comments about this medicine or your own personal ways of making Blue Vervain tincture, please share those in the comments below. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me in the kitchen, learning about making Blue Vervain tincture. And I would love to hear your comments. I would love your questions. Please head over to the Sky House Herbs website and see some of the upcoming courses and offerings that we have coming up. And as always, stay tuned for the next episode.